I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever Oh, what a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner, is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner, is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Ripon Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Ripon Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Coming to you from a secret cave, hidden deep within the wilderness. This is the Dark Wolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And we are broadcasting live from a secret cave hidden deep within the wilderness of Tennessee. That's right. We're ripping through the electromagnetic soup. We're tearing through the atmosphere. And we're tunneling away into your radio like a quantum particle. This is the Dark Wolf's Den Radio Show for Thursday, May the 12th. 2022. So whether you're on the edge of a reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is our season finale. That's right, folks. 2 years on radio today. Well, technically it's the 13th, but this makes the season finale for year 2. That's right. And it's so interesting that we started this season with the State of Mystery series, and we finalized the series on the last day of the season. I could not have planned this out any better if I had actually tried to plan it out like that, right? Oh man, but this is going to be a fun one, folks. We've got a fun party weekend all weekend long as we celebrate this milestone here on the Dark Wolf's Den Show. But tonight we are going to be talking about the great state of Wyoming, the last one on our list, folks. We went through every state in the Union and the paranormal state of mystery as of tonight, and we're going to dive down into the state of mystery of Wyoming here in just a moment. But first, let's go ahead and see who all we have out here in our YouTube chat room, both on the Dark Wolf's Den Show as well as the Ripon Rabbit Hole YouTube. How we doing over here tonight, folks? Sandy B checking in on the Dark Wolf's Den Show says, Wyoming, here we come. That's right, Sandy B, glad to see you, as well as X-Gen says, evening fam, evening X-Gen, glad to see you, my friend. Chris Spivey, U.S. Army Spec 4C Spivey, reporting for duty. Salute you, soldier. Very well done. Glad to have you here, my good friend. He also says, yo, this song needs to be set to metal music. You know, I could see that. That is a song, that the Wonderland intro song that you guys just heard, that is definitely a song that needs to be set to metal music. That would sound really, really good, wouldn't it? I could hear it, especially with Chick singing it still, just upping it just a little bit. Oh, that'd be awesome. Secret Cave, he said, yeah, you've been to the Secret Cave. Not everybody gets to visit the Secret Cave. Chris actually has been here in the Secret Cave and got a grand tour of the studio and everything, or my home studio. So glad to see you again, my friend, along for this fantastic ride and helping celebrate 2 years, folks. 2 years on radio. Can you believe it? Raider Champion says, welcome to State of Mystery series finale. That's right, Raider. Absolutely right. X-Gen also checking in on the Ripon Rabbit Hole. Says, evening, fellow travelers. Evening, X-Gen. Once again, Sandy B also checking in over at the Ripon Rabbit Hole. Mandani Mall says, OMG in WY. A good breakdown of that state. Lettering. Let's see if we can come up with many more. Wyoming ain't got a lot of letters to choose from to play with, does it? Earth Daughter says, hi everyone, I'm multitasking but listening. Glad to have you along, Earth Daughter. I also see Deborah O'Connor coming in there. Says the Dark Wolf's Den Show. Good evening, Wolfie. Good evening, Miss O'Connor. Always a pleasure to see you as well. I'd also excuse me, A little froggy in the throat there. Yeah, wolves, frogs, Anyway, I would like to give a shout out to all the new listeners that we have. I've been getting the word out more and more here in Tennessee, and I do hope we have a couple new listeners, including my friend Catherine. You said you would be listening tonight, so I do hope that you were able to get the notification and catch this live show. I'm once again so glad to see every last one of you guys over on the YouTube chat, again in the Dark Wolf's Den Show, or on the Ripon Rabbit Hole site, or if you're listening over on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network also. And, of course, whether you are listening on YouTube or around the world on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the RiponRabbitHole.com, or, of course, on the replay on BitChute or Rumble, we're glad to have every last one of you guys along for the ride. That's right. And we're going to take that ride together here in just a moment. But, of course, before we do, we've got two more fun little segments to get to, the first of which we call Today And of course, last night's Today in History had a Mandela Effect twist to it, and today also has a Mandela Effect twist to it, as check this out, on this day in 1932, the body of the kidnapped son of Charles Lindbergh is found in Hopewell, New Jersey. So in the timeline I come from, for a lack of better terms, this did not happen. The Lindbergh baby was never found, according to the history that I remember. So that is definitely a Mandela effect that affects me and a number of other people. What do you remember? But history remembers that the body was found on this day in 1932, and that is today's segment of Today in History. Say what? Our quote of the day today, folks, comes from 90s band Semisonic in their song Closing Time, and it says, and I quote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." End quote. Quote that I have liked for a very long time and will now be stuck in my head the rest of the night. Anyways, folks, that is today's segment of Say What? And as we bring this season to an end with the great state of Wyoming, we of course turn first to the cryptid creatures of the state. And we talked last night in Wisconsin, what a great show that was, about the different water bunnies, or lake monsters, if you will, that inhabit that state, a large number. I was really surprised at the amount of the number of lake monsters that inhabited the state. However, there is also a lake monster in a number of states around the country, as we know. It's become quite more common than even I thought it would in this whole series, including the state of Wyoming. And this one is called Smetty. The local Indians had become very fearful of Lake Desmet in Wyoming, in Johnson County, Wyoming. And there were previous stories of why that was, that had nothing to do with this particular creature, so we're not going to dive into that. But it was also fearful of a creature that was later named Smetty. When white settlers came to the area, some reported seeing a serpent swimming in the lake. They reported it to be as big around as a tree and about 40 feet long. It had a head like a horse and a bony ridge down its back. How many times have we heard this same description, having the head like a horse, right? And then the serpentine body. Stories from the tribes near the lake claim the monster had been known to snatch people from its banks and disappear with them into the lake's depths that are allegedly lined with bottomless tunnels, which means they've got plenty of ways to escape into other water outlets. Railroad surveyor Edward Gillette highlighted the experience of the Barkley family, who had a meeting with Smetty in the 1925 book Locating the Iron Trail. They had seen two sea serpents which had made a great commotion in the water and swam as fast as a horse could trot. Miss Barkley stated that, quote, they looked like a long telephone pole with lard buckets attached, end quote, referring no doubt to the fins or flappers along the side. So this has a lake monster in Lake Desmet, Wyoming, that matches the many, many, many independent verification of stories that in case files that we've heard across so many of these different states. The creature's size, the shape of the head, specifically it's always a horse. We have head camel, but still it's that general shape, right? That horse-like head on these serpentine creatures. How many grains of sand do you need to build the beach? I think we've built many, many beaches along this last year as we've put together so many different case files of these creatures that are independently reported by people that do not know each other. And another strange paranormal mystery in Montana isn't necessarily a cryptid. We're going to do something a little different tonight with our season finale episode, and we're going to dig into a deep, deep mystery. This is the mystery of the San Pedro mummy. Check this out.
Whenever the American West is mentioned, it conjures up images of cowboys, Indians, and miners.
Even having lived in the West a couple different times myself, I would say I have to agree. When I think about the West, I think about miners, cowboys, Indians, the whole nine, right?
This story involves two amateur miners who were searching for gold, but found something much more rare. It all began in July of 1934.
Before we go on, Chris Spivey is speaking of the lake monster, says, with the national forest beside that lake, there's a lot of hiding spots for someone like that. So I would have to agree. If it's, I'm sure it's got a lot of food there in the lake, that's without question. And with the national forest that is a lot of that state, Wyoming, it's not inconceivable that something could exist, right?
Or when Cecil Maine and Frank Carr were mining for gold in the San Pedro Mountains. They had found a seam of gold that disappeared into the rock. They decided to blast away the rock to expose more gold. When they did so, the dust from the explosion settled and the gold had disappeared. They also discovered a small cave measuring no more than 15 feet long and 4 foot wide. Once they went inside, they noticed a tiny human body no more than 6.5 inches tall sitting on a ledge.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen, a 6.5-inch human mummy. Less than a foot tall, just over half a foot as a matter of fact. That is absolutely tiny. And of course, we've talked a couple times on a Dark Wolf's Den show about little people, and it really does make you wonder if this could be raw evidence of that. Definitely very mysterious, but our mystery has only began.
It had been mummified from the Wyoming climate and was in a crouching position. They weren't quite sure what it was, but they knew it was unique. So they took the mummy from the cave and traveled some 60 miles southwest to the town of Casper. There they sold it for $25, and it soon became known as Pedro in various sideshow exhibits.
It would go on to pass through the hands of a number of different owners over the years.
There are oral traditions of many Native American tribes, including the Sioux, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Crow, that tell of little people who stand from 20 inches to 3 feet tall. Some said that they were tiny people eaters, while others said they were known to have been spirits and healers. These were the types of things that Westerners scoffed at until Pedro was actually found. The Shoshone Indians of Wyoming called these little people Nimeragar. They told of how these little people would attack them with tiny bows and poisoned arrows. The tales also told how they were known to kill their own kind with a single blow to the head if they became too ill.
I've always said on this show how much weight I put into Native American, quote, lore and mythos, end quote. And I actually brought that up last night too. But now you've got a case where not only is it lore and mythos, but there's been raw evidence found to suggest the truth behind these supposed myths, right?
Could Pedro have been one of these little people that Native Americans told about? Ivan Goodman, the car salesman, took Pedro to New York. There he was examined by the American Museum of Natural History in New York and the Anthropology Department of Harvard University.
Everyone knows how much of a loathing that I have for mainstream academia. With that said, though these are very accredited universities according to the mainstream academia, let's see what they were able to find in their testing of this mummy.
These two institutes agreed that Pedro was no hoax and was indeed a genuine human specimen.
So these institutes of academia, nonetheless, have verified that this is a human of some type. 6.5 inches tall, folks. That is a very small human. But is it an adult or not?
The experts disagreed as to precisely what Pedro was. One theory stated that he was a baby suffering from a rare genetic condition called anencephaly. That is a congenital disability that occurs in the womb and leads to the absence of part of the fetus's brain, skull, and scalp. Pedro's tiny size led many to believe that he was a baby even before the experts examined him.
And if you guys remember a couple years back, there was a lot of cases of microencephaly due to the Zika. That's what it was, the Zika virus that was going around, I guess, Africa, maybe South America. I don't remember the location. Forgive me, it's been a few years and I've slipped since then. But if you guys remember hearing those news stories, they were talking about it causing microencephaly also, where basically most of the brain is missing.
Several anthropologists from the University of Wyoming and Henry Shapiro of the American Museum of Natural History did believe him to be an infant.
Raider says Zika, Zika, Zika. Wasn't that drink in the night? Oh, that was Zima. That's right. Zima. That's what that was. But yes, the Zika virus.
Shapiro took x-rays and photographs of Pedro from which he drew his conclusion.
However, it cannot be overstated that it was a theory that this was an infant. It is not verified either way that the theory is correct.
On a second trip to New York, Goodman left the mummy with a Seymour Leonard Wadler. Shortly thereafter, Goodman fell ill and died. The mummy was never returned to the Goodman family, and it has not been seen again.
Which, let's be honest, is anyone surprised that a specimen like that has suddenly gone missing? It's almost like there was involvement by groups that we all know like to hide and cover things up.
Where that particular Pedro mummy is now, no one knows. But there have been people that have offered reward money for it. Pedro's absence has not daunted the mummy seekers nor the believers in little people. Of course, this was all started well before the disappearance of Pedro with the Native American tales.
Interestingly enough, this is where our story connects back to last night's show on Wisconsin. Check this out.
On August 17, 1941, a Milwaukee Journal article titled, "Did a Race of Pygmies Once Live in America?" seemingly started the beliefs in the alternative baby theory.
Now, this is where the mystery gets really strange. Sometimes it is good to ask for a second opinion.
According to this account, the mummy was a tiny man who was 65 years old at the time of his death. There are some people who have examined the x-rays and believe that Pedro was indeed a fully grown human.
And there is a good amount of evidence to back this up.
They believe the skeleton is fully developed and there is one row of teeth present, which indicates it's an adult. If it was a baby or an infant, it would have 2 rows of teeth, with one being further up and into the jaw. It is also believed that there is food in the stomach, at least according to the x-ray, and it is raw meat, further backing the theory of it being an adult. The teeth have also been described as being pointed and one of the flesh-eating variety. If Pedro could be examined again with today's DNA technology and medical scanning, it might give us more evidence as to who or what he might be. As it stands, it's still a debated topic and somewhat of a mystery, especially since he's still missing.
And unfortunately, you cannot do tests on something that you cannot access. Of course, with the mummy missing, it is hard to get any more information. However, in the 1990s, there was a small change of events.
However, there has been one more clue. In the 1990s, the popular show Unsolved Mysteries featured an episode about Pedro. As a result, a Wyoming rancher brought Dr. Gill, who was featured in the episode, another mummy. This one was found in the same Pedro Mountain area, but in 1929 or so. Dr. Gill sent the mummy to the Denver Children's Hospital and also examined it himself. They obtained X-rays and a DNA sample as well as radiocarbon dating. Following those tests, Dr. Gill said it confirmed everything he had ever thought about the Pedro mummy, including the diagnosis of anencephaly.
So, a incredibly mysterious case there. Was it a child? Was it a full-grown adult? Either way, it was 6.5 inches tall, folks. Not even a whole foot tall. So there was possibly, more likely than not, a tribe of little people living in Wyoming around the same time as the Shoshone. Why would the Shoshone make something up, make an enemy up nonetheless, to fight with when I'm sure they had plenty of enemies of their own? And to verify it being little people with the finding of the mummies, how many grains of sand do you need to build a beach? And the next beach we're going to build, folks, you're not going to believe it. I didn't at first either. Check this out. If you grew up in the 90s, you might recognize this voice. Fast as fast can be, you'll never catch me. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, for those that know, that is the jackalope. That was a creature from America's Funniest People in the 90s, a TV show hosted by Dave Coulier, and a creature that I thought was a total fabrication. However, it turns out the jackalope has a very sordid history. Now, this has been known to be a hoax creature, right? Or is it? I know, folks, stick with me. I promise I've not lost my mind yet. But there may not be as much hoax to the jackalopes as you once thought. Check this out.
The jackalope. You might think you know the truth about this rabbit with antlers. It is nothing more than a tall tale of the Wild West, a campfire story told by imaginative frontiersmen to entertain their children or their drinking buddies.
Sandy B says legend. What do you guys think? Have you heard of the jackalope? If so, do you think it's a legend? Or do you think it's a hoax? Do you think it's just something they've made up? They have postcards of the jackalope. Well, you're right, Sandy. Check this out, guys. This is really cool.
Specimens such as the one pictured here are the result of creative taxidermy, the posthumous gluing of antlers to the body of a common jackrabbit. It is a fairy tale, a myth, a sideshow attraction meant to dupe the gullible and sell postcards. That is the popular story. It is what most people believe is true.
And it's what I have believed is true all my life, because once again, the only time I've ever heard of a jackalope was on a TV show skit in the 90s. Aside from that, I had never known it to be anything but.
However, it is also wrong, or rather incomplete. While forgeries such as this altered carcass are indeed a part of the jackalope story, it is not the whole truth. There is a very real biological component to this legend. The case of the jackalope begins in much the same way most paranormal events do. Indeed, the initial sightings are no different than your average Bigfoot encounter. People living on the American frontier would be walking through the woods only to unexpectedly stumble upon what appeared to be a rabbit with horns or antlers. It would always slip away, but that did not stop the eyewitnesses from telling people about it when they returned to civilization.
And once again, it goes back to what I say here all the time. How many grains of sand do you need to build a beach? How many times have we heard the same thing over and over and over along these cryptid creatures, whether it be a dogman or a reptilian, or the lake monsters that seem to inhabit 3/4 of the country, right? Or even, like he mentioned, the Bigfoots. How many grains of sand do you need to build a beach? How many independent eyewitness verifications do you need before you start to think there's some relevant truth to it?
Soon other people began saying that they too had seen these mysterious jackrabbits with horns like antelopes, hence why they came to be called jackalopes. Naturally, the curiosity here was tremendous. It was understood that these jackalopes could be a new species, and whoever caught one and proved they existed would be rich and famous. So it was that people began hunting for the wily wabbits, and so too began the frustration. No matter what, the jackalopes simply refused to be caught. They always escaped, or they never showed up at all. Since hunts for the mystery animal occurred on the frontier, and since people living on the frontier had a propensity for exaggeration, jackalope hunters began coming up with excuses as to why the creature constantly eluded them. It must be able to turn invisible, or it can somehow throw its voice to lead people astray. The more time passed without results, the more fantastical accounts of the jackalope became, turning from an unusual animal into a supernatural trickster spirit.
And like he mentioned with the Bigfoot, I've heard people suggest that Bigfoot could be interdimensional or even a number of different things, but you don't necessarily have to invoke that for the explanation of why Bigfoot would disappear. I can come up with a couple myself that are more biological in nature, like perhaps a oil on the skin or fur that would allow them to disappear from our sight, right? To become what we would consider invisible, yet they haven't actually moved anywhere. You don't have to invoke interdimensional or even alien for something like that, right?
Soon enough, the myths surrounding the jackalope overshadowed the reality, and it became yet another tall tale of the Wild West. Compounding matters were the hucksters. People looking to make a quick buck realized that making a fake jackalope was as easy as gluing antlers on a dead rabbit, and so the world began seeing a plethora of stuffed jackalopes on display in sideshows and carnivals, courtesy of your local taxidermist. Though a few gullible souls no doubt fell for these hoaxes, most people saw them for what they really were. By the 1930s, people had completely forgotten that jackalope sightings were ever taken seriously.
So, real quick, I gotta say, the fact that the jackalope even goes back to the 1930s blows my mind. I had never heard of it except for a comedy skit that I thought was a character made up by the guy that did the comedy skit in the 90s. I had no idea that there was this hidden history of jackalopes. I would even dare call it a Mandela effect and say that it never did exist in my timeline, for a lack of better terms. But it's really mind-boggling to me that this goes so far back in history and I had never really heard of this, right?
Eyewitnesses were labeled as crackpots, and the creature became a myth. That should have changed in 1933. That was the year one Richard Edwin Shope, virologist at Rockefeller Institute, received an unusual package that purported to contain genuine biological evidence of jackalopes. The odd protrusions he received certainly did look like horns, but when examined under a microscope, the cellular structure appeared more indicative of a wart or a tumor. Realizing that this was no prank, Shope investigated further and eventually performed a revolutionary experiment. Using samples of the warty protrusions, he concocted a mixture which he applied to the heads of perfectly healthy domestic rabbits. Lo and behold, the bunnies sprouted horns. Or, more accurately, they sprouted benign tumors due to a rare disease. Shope named the cause of this condition the Shope papilloma virus, or SPV, and with that, the mystery was finally solved. Jackalopes were real. Sort of. They were not a new species of animal, but they were not pure fabrication either. People really had been seeing rabbits with antler-like protrusions on their heads. The legend had been spawned by something real.
And in the pilot episode of the Dark Wolf's Den radio show, we discussed the number of different creatures that science has said were cryptids until the point that they had to admit they were real. Like I mentioned earlier, the gorilla was considered a cryptid until 1902. The Komodo dragon was considered a cryptid until they found an island full of them, right? The duck-billed platypus, okay, I'll give it the duck-billed platypus. If somebody come describe that creature to me that they'd seen it, I'd have been a little wary on that one myself, credit where it's due. But just the same, there's been so many times that science, quote, end quote, has told us that no, that can't be, that's not real, Bigfoot being one of many instances, and the other number of creatures that we went over on this show. And turns out so many times that in the end these creatures are real. So that's why you really have to watch where you get your information from, right? That's why you gotta listen to the Dark Wolf's Den show. Anyways, folks, you guys know that music means we have to go ahead and take a network break right here. So my name's Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, This is the Dark Wolf's Den Show, State of Mystery season finale of Wyoming. And we will be right back with the second half of Wyoming and the hauntings in the state after these messages. Stick around. Don't touch that dial. That's right.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Oh yeah, Jerry Hicks on a Thursday night, wrapping up in the season 2 finale, the State of Mystery series with Wyoming. Oh my goodness, I take my top hats off to you, Jerry, for taking us through the strangest states of mystery for this entire nation. Job well done. If you enjoyed the series State of Mystery from Jerry Hicks and the Dark Wolf's Den radio show, and you haven't done so already, please hop on over to the website, riponrabbithole.com. Sign up for a Backstage Pass and let him know. That's right, you can connect directly with Jerry through our social media network, Down the Rabbit Hole. It's absolutely free to sign up for, and it always will. In fact, it'll connect you to the entire community-generated press, Ripon Common Sense, so you can actually set up your profile, connect with friends, and share information in the groups and Down the Rabbit Hole wall. It's a lot of fun. There's been a lot of activity going on, and there's going to be a lot more activity. But you may recall a certain watch party that we had last year for David Blaine. We had a mistake, and unfortunately, all the emails that you were supposed to receive during the watch party went out all at once. So hopefully that will explain for the rest of you who haven't asked what exactly those David Blaine Ascension parties were all about. Actually, that entire system was set up really cool, but the emails never went out, so we never used it. But now that we've upgraded it, we have some really great ideas that we're going to bring your way to use that system more often with some exclusive VIP workshops, classes from CSU, some special VIP broadcast events will take place in the Backstage VIP, so sign up. It's absolutely free to do so. And check out the live schedule. Here's a look the rest of the weekend. Friday night, May 13th. Friday the 13th, you're going to need a little bit of marijuana, perhaps. That's what the topic is, marijuana, and what has it become today in 2022. Then Saturday night, May 14th, we'll dive down the rabbit hole of simulation theory. Are we living in a simulated age? Perhaps so. We'll explore that topic. Saturday, May 14th, starts at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, as all shows do. And then we'll end out the weekend right together with you. Sunday, May 15th, a look at 52 cards. That's right, there's 52 weeks in a year. There's 52 cards in a deck. 52 cards minus the jokers. We'll end out the weekend right together, Sunday, May 15th. We'll return you back to the season finale, State of Mystery for Wyoming, with Jerry Hicks and the Dark Wolf's Den radio show. You're listening to the Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, home of the Freedom Flame, riponrabbithole.com.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the Dark Wolf's Den show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And welcome back to the second half of the Dark Wolf's Den radio show for Thursday, May the 12th, 2022. So whether you're on the edge of a reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Folks, tonight so far we have went over quite a few interesting mysteries in the state of Wyoming. Some cryptid, some very unexplainable indeed, some of which only you in the end can be the judge. But In the second half, as you guys know, we like to touch on the hauntings in the state, and Wyoming has also a number of strange and interesting hauntings to choose from.
The Plains Hotel. The historic Plains Hotel opened in Cheyenne in 1911, and the hauntings here make it perfect to kick off our countdown. A man is said to have cheated on his wife on their wedding night. When the bride saw them together, she shot the man and his lover before turning the gun on herself.
So once again, we have an incredibly highly emotionally charged event that ended in a traumatic way. A thing that we have seen repeated so many times, and that afterwards have some very strange environmental effects because of this, right?
Staff and guests report the sounds of phantom laughter coming from empty rooms, the feeling of being watched by an unseen presence, and some have even encountered full-bodied apparitions wandering the halls at night.
The question, I guess, in my mind, as we have learned more and more about these case files, is back to the stone tape idea. Not necessarily stone tape per se, but perhaps the emotional energies, after long enough being built up, start to manifest outwardly into a world. For instance, the people walking up and down the halls, people in hotels usually have a highly charged emotional energy anyway. As I worked in a hotel and lived in one for quite a few years of my life, I can definitely tell you that there is a energy in a hotel that is definitely very, very strong. So if you have enough human emotional energy do the same thing, walk up and down the halls, for instance, it only begs to reason that the energy would become repetitive to the point that it would be replayed over and over and over and over and over, just from the emotional charge that is in this area. And that would be where it's getting its energy from, is the emotional charge that has been given off by us humans. Of course, as we know, we all definitely give off an emotional bioelectric frequency. Every single one of us as humans do this. It's just a natural side effect of the way our body works. So it's not a long stretch to think that there's enough emotional energy that's given off that perhaps once it's built up to a certain point, it has a backlash effect on the reality around it. A science that is yet to be discovered, if you will.
Fort Bridger. Fort Bridger was established in Wyoming in 1842. Locals and visitors alike report multiple strange occurrences throughout town, including a ghostly dog covered in metals, the spirit of an old man that wanders through the cemetery, and objects being moved by an unseen force.
And of course, forts, just like battlefields, in my opinion, should be expected to be haunted areas, because once again, you have your highly charged emotion and your high trauma. Being that it is a fort, there was probably battles of some type at some point fought there. So high emotion, high trauma, we know leads to high haunting, right? That's just been given to be a proven over the at least this year, if not the number of years that I've studied the paranormal. But speaking of battlefields, I did mention last night that myself and my buddy Chris are definitely planning a field trip, if you will, to do some research at our local battlefield that I've talked about many times here, Fort Donaldson. So looking forward to that coming up in a couple months. Of course, we will be reporting on that in season 3, if not season 4. Most likely season 3, you'll hear more about that as it happens. But back to our case file here.
The museum is said to house a spirit who enjoys playing with electrical equipment, and phantom soldiers can still be seen marching in formation. Every standing structure at Fort Bridger State Historic Site is said to be haunted, from odd sounds at night to the spirits of soldiers forever standing guard.
Again, this comes as no surprise to me, and more so is expected in my opinion.
The Wind River Reservation. The Wind River Reservation in Wyoming was established in 1868. Locals report a small, shadowy figure that likes to follow people at night. The school is said to have been built atop an old burial site.
We all know building atop a burial site is an absolute no-no, right?
And those who have been there alone after dark report odd sounds as if someone or something is following you closely, as well as a disembodied giggle. The mission is rumored to be haunted by the spirits of nuns, and the black figure of a man on horseback can be seen riding over the ridge before disappearing in a cloud of smoke.
Ghost nuns would be a little bit really creepy. However, the cowboy riding off into the sunset and disappearing into a cloud of smoke, that sounds like something right out of Bonanza, the TV show, right? Your classic Western cowboy. I love it. I absolutely love it. That is something that is just as awesome as it is weird.
The Bighorn Medicine Wheel. The Bighorn Medicine Wheel is located in the Bighorn National Forest near Lovell. It is uncertain how old the wheel is, with researchers speculating hundreds to thousands of years according to star alignment. The medicine wheel is used for vision quests, and it is said that if you go to the wheel and fast for 4 days, the spirits will come to you. Visitors have reported becoming dizzy or feeling an overpowering force on them. Some have even seen shadowy figures dancing around the edge of the circle at night.
In this case, it sounds like it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, right? Exactly what the medicine wheel was said to do. Attract the spirit.
Fort Laramie. Fort Laramie was founded in the 1830s and ran as a fur trade post for nearly 20 years before being taken over by the Army to protect the wagon trains on their way west. The most famous apparition here is that of the Green Lady, seen riding her horse east from the fort. She is believed to be the spirit of the daughter of the first agent hired on at the fort, who disappeared after riding her horse into the prairie. At Deer Creek, a nearby river, the apparition of a headless man can be seen throwing stones into the water. Careful not to get too close. He is said to be extremely unfriendly and has even been known to chase those passing by.
So I guess it can be said that when people passes by, he loses his head.
The University of Wyoming. The University of Wyoming was founded in Laramie in 1886. Reports of hauntings have come from students and staff alike from all over campus.
As we find with pretty much every campus we've covered in the State of Mystery series, which has been quite a few actually, it seems that almost every building on these campuses are haunted for some reason. It makes you wonder what really goes on some of these campuses, right?
Lab equipment is said to turn on and off on its own. Disembodied chanting floods the streets, and lights turn on in the Civic Center in the middle of the night. Rumored to be built atop an old cemetery, Night Hall is said to be the most haunted. Staff and students report unexplained winds, a terrible wailing, ghostly faces in windows, and large dark figures in the hall. Occasionally, tribal drums can be heard echoing from the basement at night.
How many times do we have to say it? Do not build over top a burial mound, folks. Any kind of graveyard, do not build on top of.
Number 4, the Sheridan Inn. The Sheridan Inn in Sheridan, Wyoming opened in 1893 under the ownership of William F. Buffalo Bill Cody. His spirit is still seen by staff and guests roaming the hallways. The most famous ghost here is that of Miss Kate Arnold, who worked as a desk clerk and lived at the hotel for more than 60 years until 1965 when the inn was torn down. She passed away shortly after the hotel reopened, and as her final wishes stated, her ashes were placed in a wall in the building. Her spirit has been seen and felt throughout the inn, forever watching over her old home. Misty figures are seen, strange sounds are heard, and several feel as though they are not alone.
So it sounds like she wanted to become a caretaker ghost in death, and that seems to be exactly what she did. Had her remains placed within a wall of the building to ensure that if she did come back, she would come back to care for the hotel that she loved so much.
The Heart Mountain Relocation Center. The Heart Mountain Relocation Center was one of the internment camps used to hold innocent Japanese immigrants in the United States following the attack on Pearl Harbor. Those held here were forced to live in miserable conditions and were stripped of their civil rights.
They basically were put into prisoner of war camps and stripped of everything that we consider ourselves to have as Americans, especially their rights. So these people endured high amounts of trauma, which also increasingly led to higher and higher amounts of emotional unrest. In this case, negative emotional unrest, albeit.
Several visitors report being overcome by feelings of stress and tension upon entering. Commonly experienced are high EMF levels, disembodied whispers, and dark figures seen at night, closely watching and following those that enter.
And it just seems more and more to me that it's this emotional aspect that seems to have the most impact on the reality, right? It seems like if you have enough of any type of emotion, happy, sad, whatever it may be, that has grown in one area of space-time fabric, then it will manifest itself with, for lack of a better term, in a number of different ways, whether it be haunting echoes of the past vocally, all the way down to environmental changes as we have seen. I really, really feel that the emotional aspect of this is very, very, very important.
The Occidental Hotel. The Occidental Hotel was founded as a hotel and bordello in Buffalo in 1880. Guests commonly report encountering the ghost of a young girl with long dark hair wearing a blue dress. She is said to be the spirit of a young girl who died at the hotel many years ago. Some have felt her tiny hand tapping on them or had their luggage hidden. Several have reported seeing famous figures from the Old West. Lights are seen where there are none, and disembodied voices and laughter can be heard in empty rooms.
I mean, at least this is a playful ghost, right? We don't know the situation that led to the death, so we can't speculate on why this was caused, but we can assume that to some degree it followed the recipe, and as we know, children for some reason seem to carry a much, much stronger energy than adults do.
The Francis E. Warren Air Force Base. The Francis E. Warren Air Force Base was established just west of Cheyenne in 1867 as Fort D.A. Russell. The base is said to be home to a variety of paranormal happenings, including full-bodied apparitions, disembodied voices, and extreme cold spots. A veiled woman in black roams the cemetery at night, often frightening those passing by. The spirit of a Native American woman, assaulted and killed by a group of soldiers, is seen and heard throughout the campground. On multiple occasions, security have been called to the missile silos to investigate various disturbances. When they arrive, they report seeing Native American warriors on horseback riding on a nearby ridge. Mysterious whispers, bootsteps, and gunfire have been heard throughout the area. The spirits of soldiers in 19th century uniforms have been seen roaming the grounds and in several buildings.
And again, any military base, I would expect nothing less than a large variety of hauntings. But what do you guys think of the state of Wyoming? From the cryptid creatures to the crazy hauntings, do you think that Wyoming is definitely a state of mystery? Or perhaps we're barking up the wrong tree? In the end, ladies and gentlemen, all you can do is look at the evidence, apply a little common sense, and you be the judge. We got to close it out. That's right, that's it for this episode of the Dark Wolf's Den Radio Show for Thursday, May the 12th, 2022. It's also the end of Season 2, ladies and gentlemen. We've done it. We've made it 2 full years on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, and we're so glad to have had every last one of you guys that has been along for this incredible ride. And incredible it has been, folks. But don't you worry, the weekend fun has only just begun, ladies and gentlemen, because tomorrow on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the RiponRabbitHole.com, our buddy AJ the Ripon Rabbit takes back to the airwaves with an all-new episode of the Ripon Rabbit Hole Live Show. This go-round, AJ is going to be talking about marijuana. That's right, the states have individually made different aspects of marijuana legal, from the medical to the recreational use thereof, and it's only a matter of time before the federal government takes a second look at this possible wonder drug also. And we shall see in time. And AJ will be discussing this topic of marijuana tomorrow, Friday, May 13th, Friday the 13th, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 Central. Then on Saturday, May the 14th, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 Central, our buddy AJ the Ripon Rabbit comes back again to the airwaves to discuss with you simulation theory. That's right. I know a lot of my Mandela effect friends very much believe in the simulation theory, and it's definitely something that I am very intrigued by myself. I was, matter of fact, having a conversation just the other night with My Life DIY about that very topic. So if you are interested in the simulation theory, make sure you stop by Ripon Common Sense Radio Network at the RiponRabbitHole.com, or on YouTube at Ripon Rabbit Hole, as AJ discusses simulation theory on Saturday, May 14th, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 Central. Then on Sunday, May 15th, to round the weekend out right with you guys, AJ comes back one last time with an episode about 52 cards. There's a lot of life mysteries hidden in the deck of cards. I cannot go through them right now because the list is way too long and I don't want to ruin it for Mr. AJ, but I can tell you it is incredibly intriguing, and being a magician, I'm sure he has one or two tricks up his sleeve. And that's going to round the weekend out right here on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network. If you haven't already, do make sure that you hop on over to the RiponRabbitHole.com. That is RiponRabbitHole.com. Over there's where you're going to find myself and AJ and a plethora of fun, like our groups section, where you can check out many groups from My Life DIY's Gangsta Gardening to Raider Champions Be Well, and even the International Mandela Effect Conference. So a wide variety of groups to choose from, and those are only just a small selection. Also, while you're over there, make sure you drop down the rabbit hole. That is our exclusive privatized social media section, where we like to share information with the rest of the rabbits. We are based on freedom here at the freedom-loving RiponRabbitHole.com, home of the Freedom Flame, of course. We do not shadow ban. We do not kick you off the platform. As a matter of fact, we want you over here on our platform to share the truth with us. Also, one last thing to do on the RiponRabbitHole.com is come on over to the 24/7 Backstage Lounge. That's right, that's where I'm going to be right after the show here in just a couple moments, and I would love to see you all there. That's right. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for this wolf to head on out. It has been an amazing 2 years, folks, and here's to 2 more wonderful years and counting. On behalf of AJ the Ripon Rabbit, Chick Mandela Effect, Michael Musco, Walt House, everyone at Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, my name's Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and you've been listening to the Dark Wolf's Den radio show, State of Mystery Series Season Finale, Wyoming, folks. We've done it. Yeah, we've done it, folks. 2 years, we made it. We made it together, and I'm so proud and so happy, and I just cannot tell you guys enough how much I love it. We're celebrating this weekend, folks. Come celebrate with us in the backstage wrap-up party right after the show. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, and until next we meet, remember, stay awake, but dare to dream. Good night, everybody. Oh, yeah. That's right. We did it!
I'm lost and into the dark. Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause 'cause no one's ever home. Oh, what a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner. Is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner. Is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
All right, guys, shut it down. That's a wrap.